Evelyn Harper was driving along a narrow mountain road outside Asheville when her phone rang. The caller ID showed her lawyer's name, Jonathan Pierce. She answered casually at first, until his voice came through tight and unsteady. "Evelyn, you need to stop what you're doing," he said. "There are people living in your mountain house. Strangers. They changed the locks, and when I tried to enter, a man came out and told me I was trespassing." The words didn't register at once. Evelyn pressed the brakes instinctively, gravel spraying as the car shuddered to a halt on the steep curve. Her hands locked around the steering wheel. "That house has been vacant for months," she said slowly. "It was locked. No one has access except you and me." Jonathan exhaled sharply. "I thought the same. But they are inside, drinking wine, watching television, acting like they own the place. I've never seen anything like this." For the first time, fear cut through Evelyn's calm. The property was an A-frame home deep in the mountains, inherited from her grandmother, Eleanor Prescott. Evelyn had sent Jonathan ahead for a final inspection before listing it for sale. What he was describing made no sense. Her pulse began to race, not from panic, but from a cold realization that something was deeply wrong. Evelyn ended the call and immediately dialed 911. She spoke clearly, forcing her voice to stay steady. "This is Evelyn Harper. There are unknown individuals illegally occupying my property outside Asheville. My attorney encountered them inside the house. The locks have been replaced without permission." The operator acknowledged her and dispatched officers. Evelyn didn't wait. She pressed the accelerator and drove hard toward the mountains, her thoughts narrowing into sharp focus. This wasn't confusion anymore, it was intrusion. As she drove, Jonathan texted her photos, a new deadbolt, unfamiliar shoes by the door, wine glasses on the coffee table. Evidence. When she arrived, police vehicles were already parked outside the house. The front door stood open. Inside, 2 uniformed officers stood near the entrance. Jonathan was there, documents clutched in his hands, his face drawn with disbelief. And standing beyond them, as if nothing were wrong at all, were Evelyn's younger sister, Lauren Whitfield, and her husband, Derek Collins. Lauren leaned casually against the sofa, swirling wine in a crystal glass that Evelyn recognized instantly, one of her grandmother's antiques. The sight made Evelyn's stomach tighten, not with anger, but with a deep, quiet sense of betrayal. Lauren's reaction was not shame or surprise. She sighed exaggeratedly when she saw Evelyn. "Seriously," she said. "You call the police over this?" Derek laughed under his breath, folding his arms. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You changed the locks. You moved in without permission. This is my property." Lauren waved a dismissive hand. "Relax. You own multiple houses. This one was just sitting here empty. We needed a place. Family helps family." Derek nodded. "We canceled our apartment lease last month. Rent was a waste when this place was free." One of the officers interrupted calmly. "Did you give them permission to live here?" Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Absolutely not." The officers glanced past them, scanning the room. What they saw changed the tone instantly. The elegant living room had been stripped of warmth. Steel racks lined the walls. Dozens of laptops hummed. Thick soundproofing sheets were taped over the windows. Cables ran through drilled holes in the floor. It looked less like a home and more like an illegal operation. Evelyn turned slowly toward Lauren. "What is all this?" Lauren shrugged. "Work. Some people don't get rich by luck. Some of us actually hustle." The senior officer straightened. "You don't have a lease. You're operating a business here without authorization. The owner is present and demanding you leave." Lauren leaned back on the sofa, smirking. "We've been here over 24 hours. That counts for something. If you force us out, I'll call a lawyer for human rights violations." Derek took a step forward, his tone rising. "Don't push us." The officer moved closer. "Sir, stand back." Derek shoved him hard in the chest. The room froze. In seconds, Derek was on the floor, handcuffs snapping shut. "You're under arrest for assaulting an officer," the officer said firmly. Lauren screamed and lunged forward, clawing at another officer's arm. She was restrained just as quickly. As they were dragged outside, Lauren shouted at Evelyn, her voice cracking with rage. "You did this. You sold us out." Evelyn watched in silence as they were placed in patrol cars. When the vehicles pulled away, the house fell quiet again. The damage was undeniable. Jonathan surveyed the walls grimly. This will affect the appraisal.
Badly.
Evelyn barely heard him. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, words whispered years ago in a hospital room, words Evelyn had never understood, until now. Jonathan, Evelyn said suddenly, let's check the attic.
He hesitated. There's nothing up there.
It's untouched.
Exactly, she replied. They climbed the narrow ladder and pushed open the attic door. Dust coated everything. Old toys. A folded blanket.
Then Evelyn noticed it, a section of drywall that was newer than the rest. She pulled it free, revealing a matte black digital safe hidden behind insulation.
Her breath caught.
She knew, Evelyn whispered. Jonathan watched as she entered a 4-digit code without hesitation.
The lock clicked open. Inside were neatly organized files. Bank records. Client lists. Forged documents.
Jonathan's face went pale as he read. Evelyn, every fraudulent account here is under your name. Your social security number. Your signature. At the bottom lay a handwritten letter from Eleanor Prescott, explaining everything. How she had discovered the scheme, how Lauren planned to frame Evelyn as the mastermind. Eleanor had gathered evidence quietly, knowing time was running out. Evelyn closed her eyes, steadying herself.
Her sister hadn't just stolen property. She had tried to steal her life.
When Evelyn opened her eyes again, her voice was calm, deliberate, and final. This goes to federal investigators. Every page. The storm had only just begun, but now, Evelyn was ready. Within 48 hours, the case was formally escalated to federal jurisdiction. The scale of the fraud, the use of interstate wire transfers, and the exploitation of elderly victims left no room for local handling. Evelyn sat across from Marcus Bennett, a senior investigator with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, in a quiet cafe in downtown Asheville. Marcus reviewed the attic documents methodically, his expression tightening with every page. This isn't amateur work, he said. It's organized wire fraud, identity theft, and elder financial abuse. Whoever did this planned to let you take the fall.
He slid a tablet across the table.
Transaction records filled the screen. Over $800,000 moved through accounts opened in your name. Luxury purchases, international transfers, and cryptocurrency wallets. Evelyn felt a slow chill settle in her chest, not fear, but fury. They destroyed my credit. My reputation.
Marcus nodded.
If we hadn't intercepted this, your assets would have been frozen within weeks.
He leaned back slightly. But we have an advantage. They think you're cornered.
Evelyn met his gaze.
Then let's make sure they keep thinking that. The plan was simple, legal, and precise.
Marcus placed a compact recording device on the table. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, he said. If you agree to the recording, it's admissible. Evelyn didn't hesitate. The bait would be a fabricated trust fund, convincing enough to lure Lauren back into talking freely.
People like your sister can't resist bragging, Marcus added.
Especially when they think they've won. Evelyn drafted the message carefully, apologetic in tone, calculated in wording.
She implied regret. She hinted at money. She pressed send. The reply came within minutes. Lauren's eagerness practically bled through the screen. The meeting was set for the next afternoon at the Mountain House. Marcus coordinated surveillance quietly. Federal agents would wait nearby, listening in real time. Evelyn returned home that night, sleeping little, not from anxiety but from clarity. For the first time since discovering the safe, she felt in control. The following afternoon, Lauren and Derek arrived with visible confidence. Designer sunglasses.
Relaxed smiles. Lauren walked in as if she'd never been arrested there days earlier. Looks like you finally came to your senses, she said, dropping into a chair. Evelyn gestured calmly toward the documents laid out on the table. There's another trust my grandmother hid. But there's a problem.
Lauren leaned forward instantly.
What problem?
Evelyn kept her voice measured. The IRS flagged my accounts.
If I don't explain the transactions properly, everything gets seized. Lauren's expression flickered, then hardened. Then explain them.
Evelyn nodded. That's why I need details. Dates. Methods. Amounts. Derek smirked. You want us to spell it out?
Exactly, Evelyn said. So I can protect us.
The word us sealed it. Lauren exhaled and relaxed. Fine, she said.
2 years ago, we started opening accounts in your name. Old people trust authority, especially when it sounds professional.
Her voice carried pride. The recorder captured every word.
Lauren spoke freely now, animated, careless.
Grandma's old client list was gold. Lonely retirees. Big savings.
No one watching closely. Derek leaned in, eager to contribute. Your clean financial history was the perfect cover. The money came in, got layered, then disappeared overseas.
Lauren laughed softly. They cried thanking us.
Said we were saving their futures. Evelyn's hands stayed still on the table.
$800,000 is a lot, she said quietly. Lauren scoffed.
It was easy. People like that don't deserve to sit on money they don't even know how to use. Derek added. If anything went wrong, you'd look like the mastermind.
Rich sister exploiting clients. We'd just be caretakers.
They laughed together, unaware that their words were being transmitted live to agents parked less than a mile away. Lauren leaned back, smug. Honestly, this trust fund just makes everything perfect.
Evelyn stood slowly. Yes, she said. It does. She stepped back and spoke one word into her phone. Now.
The front door burst open as federal agents stormed in, weapons drawn, voices sharp and controlled. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. Lauren froze, disbelief flooding her face.
Derek dropped his glass.
Marcus Bennett entered last, badge visible. Everything you said was recorded, he said calmly.
Wire fraud.
Elder abuse. Aggravated identity theft. Lauren screamed, lunging forward, but was restrained instantly. As cuffs snapped shut, she turned on Derek, shouting accusations. He shouted back, panic unraveling them both. Evelyn watched without expression. Before I continue, I need to ask you a quick favor. We're working toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and your support truly makes a difference. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. That single click helps keep this channel growing and allows me to keep bringing you stories like this. The trap had closed cleanly, exactly as planned. When the agents escorted them out, the house felt lighter, as if something toxic had finally been removed. Evelyn didn't follow. She stood alone in the quiet room, knowing the worst was over, and the truth, at last, was secure. The arrests moved quickly through the system. Within weeks, federal charges were formally filed, and Evelyn's name was cleared from active suspicion. The recorded confession, paired with the attic documents, formed an airtight case. Prosecutors charged Lauren Whitfield with multiple counts of wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and elder financial exploitation. Derek Collins faced related conspiracy charges, though his legal posture shifted almost immediately. His attorney contacted prosecutors offering cooperation. By providing full access to overseas wallets and transaction trails, Derek secured a plea agreement. The distinction was clear from the start. Lauren had designed the scheme, recruited the victims, and orchestrated the framing of her sister. Derek had followed, benefited, and assisted. The imbalance in responsibility would later be reflected in sentencing. Evelyn attended none of the preliminary hearings. Instead, she focused on repairing what had been damaged. Banks reopened frozen accounts. Credit agencies restored her standing. Clients who had quietly stepped back returned with cautious apologies. Reputation, she learned, healed slowly, but truth healed it completely. The trial took place in federal court in Asheville the following spring. Lauren sat at the defense table wearing a plain suit that looked borrowed rather than chosen. The confidence she once wore so easily was gone. Derek testified early, avoiding her gaze entirely. His cooperation dismantled what little defense remained. When the prosecution played the recorded confession, the courtroom grew still. Lauren's own voice filled the room, mocking, proud, unrepentant. The judge listened without visible reaction. Victim impact statements followed. Elderly men and women spoke of emptied savings, lost medical security, and shattered trust. Evelyn sat in the gallery, hands folded, listening in silence. She did not look at Lauren. She didn't need to. The evidence spoke clearly enough. When closing arguments ended, no one doubted the outcome. Justice, in this case, was not dramatic. It was methodical. Sentencing came swiftly. The judge's voice was calm, precise, and final. Lauren Whitfield was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, followed by supervised release and full restitution orders. The court cited her role as the principal architect of the crimes and the deliberate attempt to frame her sister. Derek Collins received 12 months of probation under his plea agreement, along with financial penalties and cooperation obligations. Lauren reacted with disbelief, shouting as marshals restrained her.
The courtroom remained unmoved.
Assets purchased with stolen funds were seized, vehicles, luxury goods, electronics, and liquidated under federal supervision. A portion of the recovered money was returned to 6 identified victims. Evelyn later visited one of them, Ruth Henderson, who clasped her hands and whispered thanks through tears.
"My grandson can go to college now," she said. Evelyn nodded gently. That mattered more than any verdict.
The confrontation with her mother came outside the courthouse. Patricia Whitfield approached Evelyn, her composure fractured.
"You could have settled this quietly," she said.
"You didn't have to ruin your sister's life." Evelyn listened, then asked one question. "When you saw how Lauren was living, did you ever wonder where the money came from?"
Patricia looked away. "I assumed you were helping her," she said bitterly.
"That's what family does." Something closed inside Evelyn then, cleanly and without regret.
"Family doesn't steal identities," she replied.
"Family doesn't frame their own blood for prison." She handed Patricia a copy of Eleanor Prescott's final letter.
"Grandma knew.
She protected me when no one else did."
Patricia said nothing more. There was nothing left to say. Evelyn walked away without looking back.
With the case concluded, the Mountain House was finally released from evidence hold. The damage downstairs was extensive, but the attic remained untouched, preserved like a quiet witness. When Evelyn sold the property, the buyers fell in love with that hidden space and paid full asking price. She used the proceeds to buy a modest home far from Asheville, far from memory. Years later, news of her former family reached her only as rumor. Lauren serving her sentence, Derek drifting through unstable work, Patricia living alone with fading pride.
None of it stirred anger.
Evelyn's life had moved forward.
Her credit was restored. Her name was trusted again.
In the evenings, she sometimes looked at her grandmother's photograph and felt something rare and steady, peace. Eleanor had hidden the truth so it could be found at the right moment. And because of that, Evelyn had inherited more than money. She had inherited clarity. Life settled into a quieter rhythm after the trial. Evelyn did not chase reinvention, she allowed it to arrive naturally. In her new home, mornings were calm, marked by routine rather than urgency. She resumed work slowly, choosing clients carefully, rebuilding trust with patience instead of urgency. The stain left by the crime never fully vanished from public record, but context reshaped perception. Those who mattered understood. Those who didn't faded away. Evelyn learned that reputations, like houses, could be repaired, but only after the rot was removed completely. She stopped checking the news for updates about the case. There was nothing left to monitor. Justice had taken its course. What remained was her responsibility to herself. Occasionally, letters arrived from people she didn't expect, former clients of her grandmother, distant acquaintances who had heard fragments of the story. Some thanked her. Others apologized for doubting her. Evelyn read them once, then stored them away. Validation felt unnecessary now. The truth no longer needed defense. She visited Ruth Henderson one last time before moving farther away. They sat together on a small porch, watching the sun dip behind trees. "You gave us something back," Ruth said softly. Evelyn shook her head. "It was already yours." When she left, she felt lighter than she had in years, as if closing a door that no longer needed guarding. From time to time, memories of her sister surfaced, not with pain, but with a detached curiosity. Evelyn wondered when the turning point had truly happened. It hadn't been the arrest or the trial. It had been the moment in the attic, holding proof that someone she loved had been willing to erase her existence for convenience. That clarity never faded. It shaped how Evelyn set boundaries afterward, how she evaluated trust, how she defined family. Blood, she learned, was an accident of birth. Loyalty was a choice. The house near Asheville became just another closed chapter. Evelyn never drove past it again. She didn't need to. The new owners sent a handwritten note months later, thanking her for the perfect study tucked away under the roof. Evelyn smiled when she read it. The attic had served its purpose. It had held truth until the moment it was needed, and then it had let go. Some places were not meant to be revisited. They were meant to be understood and released. Patricia Whitfield attempted contact once more through a distant relative. Evelyn declined without response. Silence, she discovered, was not cruelty. It was clarity. She did not hate her mother. Hate required energy she no longer wished to spend. What remained was distance, deliberate, necessary, and final. Evelyn focused instead on relationships built on mutual respect, not obligation. Friends who stood beside her without asking for sacrifice became her chosen family. Years passed. The case slowly became a footnote in public databases, a closed file among thousands. Lauren Whitfield's name appeared occasionally in brief reports, transfer notices, sentence updates, but Evelyn did not read them. Derek Collins vanished into obscurity, exactly where men like him ended up when shortcuts failed. Evelyn's work flourished steadily. She invested conservatively, transparently, with a reputation shaped not by wealth, but by integrity. That distinction mattered more than she once realized. On a quiet evening, Evelyn sat by her fireplace, Eleanor Prescott's photograph resting on the mantel. The older woman's eyes in the picture were sharp, knowing. Evelyn spoke aloud, not in grief, but in gratitude. "You saw what I couldn't," she said. "You trusted me with the truth." The inheritance her grandmother left behind was not the money, nor even the protection. It was foresight. The understanding that love sometimes meant preparing someone for a storm, not shielding them from it. Evelyn closed the chapter fully when she locked the last file away, no longer needing it. Her life was no longer defined by betrayal or recovery, but by intention. She had chosen truth over comfort, accountability over silence, and clarity over false peace. And because of that choice, she stood unburdened. The past no longer followed her. It stayed where it belonged, resolved, documented, and finished. Evelyn turned off the light, the house settling into quiet around her, and stepped forward into a future that was finally, entirely her own. Thank you for watching until the end. This story reminds us that loyalty doesn't mean silence, and love doesn't mean accepting harm, even when it comes from family. Choosing the truth may cost you relationships, but it protects your future and your self-respect. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Your support helps keep these stories coming.